Ariane gestartet. Heute Morgen ist vom Raumfahrtbahnhof Kourou in Französisch-Guyana eine europäische Trägerrakete vom Typ Ariane ins All gestartet. An Bord ein Fernsehsatellit, der 15 weitere Kanäle übertragen soll. Über den Satelliten Astra 1D werden ab Januar nächsten Jahres erste Tests für das digitale Fernsehen unternommen. Bis dahin soll 1D erst einmal die beiden schon existierenden Satelliten unterstützen.
Vom Raumfahrtzentrum Kourou in Französisch-Guyana brach sie in der Nacht zu ihrer 69. Mission auf. Planmäßig 20 Minuten nach dem Start setzte Ariane einen vierten Astra-Satelliten aus. Er soll Europa mit zusätzlichen Rundfunk- und Fernsehprogrammen versorgen. Weitere Aufgabe von Astra 1D: Tests für das geplante digitale Fernsehen.
Heute Nacht gegen 1:40 Uhr mitteleuropäischer Zeit gelang zum 6. Mal in diesem Jahr der Start einer Ariane.
Allumage des moteurs, allumage des papes et décollage. Lift-off.
An Bord der Rakete der fast 3 Tonnen schwere Astra 1D, ein Fernsehsatellit der luxemburgischen Firma SES. Bereits 3 seiner Geschwister befinden sich im Orbit. Falls Sie unser Programm über eine 60 cm Parabolantenne empfangen, dann kennen Sie bereits die Astra-Familie. Neben NTV ist nahezu das komplette deutsche Fernsehangebot über sie verfügbar. Und mit dem neuen Astra 1D kommen Übertragungsmöglichkeiten für weitere 14 Programme hinzu. Doch bis dahin vergeht noch etwas Zeit. Komplizierte Bahnkorrekturmanöver bringen den Satelliten bis Ende des Monats auf seine genaue Position. 19,2 Grad östlicher Länge in 36.000 Kilometer Entfernung, nicht weit von seinen Kollegen entfernt. Der Grund? Bei einer technischen Panne müssten nicht Millionen Empfangsgeräte neu eingestellt werden. Die meisten Zuschauer würden den Ausfall gar nicht mitbekommen. Bis 1996 sollen noch Astra 1E und 1F gestartet werden. So ist dann bis ins nächste Jahrtausend hinein der störungsfreie Empfang auch von NTV gesichert.
Satellite built by the U.S. company Hughes Space and Communications will provide direct television and radio broadcast to the European continent. The company says this satellite, its 4th in orbit, will be able to simultaneously transmit to 14 television networks. The Astra 1D begins service in January 1995 and is...
The satellite's expected to last for at least 13 years.
Paramètres de propulsion normaux.
All parameters are normal. We are lifted off right on schedule. And look at that big Ariane 4
La propulsion est normale.
sail into the night sky. Masuda looks like a beautiful liftoff. It's really beautiful.
Trajectory is nominal. Tous les paramètres
It's very exciting to watch.
Every crew gets to design their own patch. In this next scene here, you'll see our patch, which has the entire globe as well as the sun on it, symbolizing the global nature of looking at atmospheric research and the effect the sun has on the chemistry of our atmosphere. We had the opportunity to launch midday on November 3rd, which made it a very comfortable wake-up for half of our crew, waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning. However, because we were a dual-shift flight and conducted operations around the clock, the other 3 members of the crew had sleep-shifted themselves to wake up at 10 o'clock the previous evening. So they'd been awake about 12 hours, or actually 14 hours before we launched. We check the integrity of our suits, and then we walk out of the ONC building at the Cape to get on the Astrovan for the 7-mile drive out to the pad.
In wenigen Sekunden soll die Raumfähre Atlantis ins All starten. An Bord 6 Astronauten. Sie sollen bei ihrer Mission besonders umfassende Daten über den Zustand der Ozonschicht liefern. Wir schalten jetzt live nach Cape Canaveral.
Systems such as the aero surfaces, the landing gear, flight control system.
Raumfähre Atlantis, wir müssen wahrscheinlich noch einen Augenblick warten. Wir sehen momentan nicht viel mehr als Qualm. Wie die amerikanische Weltraumbehörde NASA mitteilte, machen Wolken über den Notlandeplätzen in Marokko und Spanien den Start zumindest Stunden vor dem Ablauf. Das ist also schon einige Zeit her. Diesen Countdown einigermaßen ungewiss, aber so wie es aussieht, wird noch zurückgezählt. Die Frage ist also, ob die Atlantis jetzt bald in die Luft geht. Vielleicht sage ich Ihnen noch einen Augenblick, was überhaupt mit dieser Mission verbunden ist. ganz im Zeichen der Erforschung der Erdatmosphäre steht diese Mission. An Bord befindet sich unter anderem der deutsche Forschungssatellit SPAS, den die Besatzung am 2. ihrer insgesamt 11 Tage im All aussetzen und später dann wieder einfangen soll. Erstmals ist das hier übrigens eine Mission, die im Herbst stattfindet und im Weltraum dann unterwegs ist, dieses Shuttle. Dann nämlich ist über der Antarktis das Ozonloch aufgerissen. Das soll dann natürlich auch bei den wissenschaftlichen Arbeiten von Nutzen sein. Soweit erstmal die Bilder. Wir schalten sofort wieder zurück, sobald dieses Shuttle sich vom Boden abhebt. Jetzt geht es erstmal kurz weiter mit einem aktuellen Wirtschaftsüberblick. Und dies sind nun wieder die Bilder aus Cape Canaveral. Es soll also jeden Augenblick losgehen. Derweil, wenn der Countdown läuft, kann ich Ihnen, solange das Shuttle noch auf dem Boden ist, erklären, was sich mit dieser Mission noch alles verbindet. Unter anderem sind nämlich im Laboratorium dieser Atlantis 10 trächtige Ratten aufgehoben, deren Jungen sollen nach der Rückkehr zur Erde auf die Wirkung der Schwerelosigkeit hin untersucht werden. Insgesamt sind 7 Messinstrumente und die Besatzung natürlich unterwegs und sie sollen die oberen...
In just seconds is the 5th NASA launch this year and will begin an 11-day mission.
7. We are go for start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Atlantis on a mission to study planet Earth.
Roll program, Houston. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Houston now controlling. Atlantis is underway on its 13th trip to space, rolling on course for a 57-degree inclination orbit, a highly north and south inclined orbit, at an altitude of 160 nautical miles. Atlantis speed is already 350 miles an hour. 3 engines on Atlantis are now throttling back to 2/3 throttle to prepare the spacecraft to pass through the area of maximum air pressure and go supersonic. About a minute and 5 seconds since launch. Atlantis speed now 1,000 miles an hour. Altitude 7 miles, 5 miles east of the Kennedy Space Center.
Go at throttle up. Roger, go at throttle up.
Atlantis 3 main engines are now back at full throttle. All systems on the spacecraft are go. 1.5 minutes since liftoff, Atlantis has already burned more than 2.25 million pounds of propellant and weighs less than half of what it did at launch. Atlantis altitude 84,000 feet, 12 miles northeast of the Kennedy Space Center. Atlantis speed now 2,200 miles an hour. Flight controllers are standing by for burnout and separation of the twin solid rocket boosters. Booster officer confirms a good separation and jettison of the twin solid rockets. Atlantis now on its 2nd stage. Its 3 main engines continuing to operate well at full throttle.
Atlantis performance nominal.
That call to Atlantis indicating that its performance on the solid rockets is just as planned to this point. Endeavour's 3 main engines will now continue to burn for another 6.5 minutes. To reach orbital velocity.
Atlantis 2-engine Ben Guerrier. Copy, 2-engine Ben Guerrier.
Endeavour speed now 3,500 miles an hour.
This is the first flight for the U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis. After 2 years, it's been undergoing a $74 million overhaul to fly its 13th mission in 9 years.
Endeavour's now 64 miles northeast of the Kennedy Space Center at an altitude of 40 nautical miles. 3 main engines on Endeavour are now burning fuel out of the...
2 Stunden und 38 Minuten dauerte es, bis sich der Mond vollständig vor die Sonne gedrängelt hatte. Die eigentliche Sonnenfinsternis dauerte dann noch 4 Minuten. In Südamerika konnten Beobachter das Naturschauspiel am besten beobachten. In die kleine chilenische Stadt Putre kamen viele tausend Himmelsforscher und Touristen, um das Spektakel zu verfolgen. In fast ganz Südamerika wurden Sonnenfinsternisfeten gefeiert. Die Partygäste mussten trotz der vorübergehenden Dunkelheit ihre Augen vor den Sonnenstrahlen schützen. Fernsehstationen übertrugen das Ereignis live in alle Welt. Aymara-Indianer zelebrierten diesen einmaligen Tag und beschworen den Sonnen- und Mondgott, er möge ihnen eine gute Kartoffelernte bescheren. Astrologen bezeichneten das Himmelsschauspiel als Beginn eines neuen Zeitalters. Nur die Vögel und Tiere waren etwas irritiert über den plötzlichen Einbruch der Nacht.
A total eclipse of the sun brought darkness to parts of the continent shortly after dawn. Scientists and tourists gathered, along with residents, to observe the moon's passage across the sun. In some countries, the eclipse was greeted by applause, music and ancient rituals.
Das Naturschauspiel war besonders gut im chilenischen Putre zu beobachten. Die Finsternis zog Schaulustige aus aller Welt an. Die südliche Halbkugel erlebte ein solches Ereignis zum letzten Mal in diesem Jahrtausend.
Vor einer Dreiviertelstunde in Florida gestartet die Raumfähre Atlantis und mit an Bord CHRISTA. CHRISTA kommt aus Wuppertal und ist ein Satellit. Guten Abend.
Guten Abend. Und was CHRISTA kann, das zeigen wir Ihnen gleich in der Aktuellen Stunde nach den Nachrichten mit Werner Schmidt.
Weltraumstadt Wuppertal. Seit knapp einer Stunde ist ein Satellit entwickelt und gebaut an der Bergischen Universität auf dem Weg ins All.
Gespanntes Warten im Kennedy Space Center, Florida, USA. Um 17:56 Uhr mitteleuropäischer Zeit war es dann soweit. Plangemäß und ohne Verzögerung startete die NASA-Raumfähre Atlantis zu einem rund zweiwöchigen Flug ins All. Mit an Bord eine Astronautin, 4 Astronauten und ein Satellit, der an der Wuppertaler Universität gebaut und entwickelt wurde. CHRISTA, so heißt das Satellitenteleskop, soll für 10 Tage von den Astronauten der Atlantis im All ausgesetzt werden. So lange soll es die Erde umrunden und dabei Daten über Ozon und andere Spurengase sammeln, wie sie bisher kein anderer Satellit liefern konnte. Das Besondere hier ist, CHRISTA kann komplexe Räume der Atmosphäre in der Höhe von 10 bis 100 Kilometer vermessen. Mit einem Spiegelsystem werden die Infrarotstrahlen, die die Spurengase aussenden, eingefangen und gespeichert. Die Wuppertaler Wissenschaftler versprechen sich genauen Aufschluss über Ozonschichtungen und Löcher. Bisherige Modelle beruhen einzig auf Computerberechnungen und ob die stimmen, weiß niemand so genau. 8 Jahre haben Wissenschaftler und Studenten der Uni Wuppertal an dem Satellitenteleskop geforscht und gearbeitet. CHRISTA ist derzeit das größte Weltraumunternehmen in Deutschland und kostet rund 50 Millionen D-Mark. Erstmalig wurde eine Universität mit einem solchen Mammutprojekt betraut.
CHRISTA ist also auf dem Weg nach oben und Christian Hohnerkamp ist im Wuppertal im Medienzentrum der Universität. Christian, ist das denn jetzt da das bergische Houston?
Auf jeden Fall. Also spätestens seit dem heutigen Tage ist Wuppertal das Houston des Bergischen Landes. Und zwar in zweierlei Hinsicht. Einmal sieht es hier genauso aus wie in Houston. Das heißt also eine Unmenge von Monitoren, Computermonitore, Kabel, kilometerlang und natürlich jede Menge von rauchenden Wissenschaftlerköpfen, die direkt oder indirekt in dem Projekt beteiligt sind. Ein Satellit mit einem Teleskop zu versehen, das ist noch nicht so schwer, aber ein Teleskop zu bauen wie dieses, das jetzt mit der Raumfähre Atlantis heute ins All geschossen worden ist, das ist schon was Besonderes. Und Klaus Vollmann von der Uni Wuppertal, der ist Doktorand, der hat an diesem Projekt kräftig mitgearbeitet, der sagt uns gerade mal, was die Besonderheiten dieses Teleskops sind. Herr Vollmann.
Ja, bei CHRISTA handelt es sich um ein Spektrometer, das die Emissionen in der Erdatmosphäre beobachten soll. Und das Besondere an dem Spektrometer ist, dass wir eine sehr, sehr hohe globale räumliche Auflösung der Erdatmosphäre erreichen können.
Bei Teleskop denke ich natürlich an ein optisches Gerät, aber das ist es, glaube ich, nicht, ne?
Es ist im Prinzip ein optisches Gerät. Sind es 3 Fernrohre mit einem Messgerät hintergeschaltet, mit dem die Emissionen der Erdatmosphäre analysiert werden.
Herr Drees, Sie sind Dekan des Fachbereichs Physik. Welche Bedeutung hat dieses Projekt ja, einmal für die Wissenschaft und natürlich einmal mit den Ergebnissen für uns? Welchen Nutzen ziehen wir daraus?
Ja, ich betrachte dieses Projekt als ein Pilotprojekt. Es ist irgendwie ein einmaliges neues Experiment insofern, als man zum ersten Mal die Spurengase in der mittleren und oberen Atmosphäre global, weltweit über einen längeren Zeitraum beobachten kann und damit eben auch sehr viel lernen kann über die Bewegungen, die sich in der Atmosphäre abspielen. Das war bisher nicht möglich. Für den Fachbereich ist es so, es ist sicherlich eines der großen Schwerpunktprogramme unseres Fachbereichs und wir hoffen natürlich dadurch, dass wir auch interessierte junge Wissenschaftler gewinnen können, an diesem Projekt mitzuarbeiten.
Okay, danke schön. Also alle Leute, die was mit Raumfahrttechnik machen wollen, ran. In der Uni Wuppertal haben Sie jede Menge Chancen. Und wenn Sie jetzt aufs Gaspedal treten, wenn Sie nachher mal wieder unterwegs sind, die Stickoxide, die Sie auspusten, kriegt CHRISTA auf jeden Fall mit. So, zurück nach Düsseldorf.
Um 13:19 Uhr wurde es in Putre dunkel. Der Mond deckte in seinem ganzen Umfang die Sonne ab. Für 2 Minuten und 58 Sekunden war von der Sonne nur noch die Corona zu sehen. Der helle Kranz hob sich zur Freude der Astronomen deutlich sichtbar hinter dem Mond ab. Während der Dunkelheit schütteten Indios Wasser Richtung Himmel. Ihre Religion sagt, die Sonne stirbt und muss wiederbelebt werden. Nach den dunklen Minuten erlebte Putre einen zweiten Sonnenaufgang, der von den Menschen mit Freudentänzen gefeiert wurde. In den letzten Tagen waren mehr als 1500 Wissenschaftler in die verschlafene Andenstadt gekommen und hatten einen Wald von Teleskopen und Kameras aufgebaut. Der 4000 Meter hoch gelegene Ort bietet ideale Sichtverhältnisse, weil er fast immer wolkenfrei ist.
4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Atlantis on a mission to study planet Earth.
The Shuttle is carrying 6 astronauts on an 11-day mission to study the Earth's atmosphere, as we just heard. They'll measure the ozone layer, which absorbs dangerous ultraviolet rays from the sun. Of particular importance is a gaping hole over Antarctica, which scientists say is caused by chemicals used on Earth. Crew members also are to release a German satellite to study the atmosphere and later retrieve it. It is the U.S. Space Agency's 7th shuttle mission this year. Scientists and tourists witnessed the southern hemisphere's last total solar eclipse this century. On Thursday, it lasted about 3 minutes. The celestial phenomenon was visible in parts of Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, Chile, Paraguay, and Argentina. Many local governments closed public offices, schools, and banks so businesses and people could enjoy the rare event. South America's last solar eclipse occurred back in 1966.
Tout se passe sur le plateau de l'observatoire dans une salle de l'aérologie. Experts belges et français sont prêts. On est à quelques heures du départ. Sur les écrans, des images des astronautes s'apprêtant à embarquer à bord de la navette. Les ordinateurs, quant à eux, fournissent toutes les données en direct. Et c'est ici aussi que, dès après-demain, on recueillera en direct encore les premiers résultats de plusieurs expériences mises au point par des Belges et des Français et destinées à mieux connaître l'influence du Soleil et de ses radiations sur notre climat. Mais il y a plus. Pour la première fois, c'est d'ici à Uccle que l'on dirigera une partie des instruments de recherche installés à bord de la navette.
À partir d'ici, nous pouvons recevoir les données en temps réel exactement comme si l'on se trouvait à côté de l'instrument, bien que l'instrument se trouve dans l'espace, et nous pouvons réagir aux données qui nous sont envoyées en envoyant des commandes qui transitent par le centre Marshall de la NASA aux États-Unis et est envoyée à l'orbiteur et de là vers l'instrument.
Vous avez quel âge?
23 ans.
Il y a longtemps que vous êtes dans la branche?
Ça fait 1 an.
Passionné?
Passionné.
Et aujourd'hui, nerveux, c'est la première fois, c'est la première grande expérience?
C'est ma 2e mission, donc on commence à s'habituer. Mais c'est toujours une première pour ce genre d'événement.
Et votre espoir, c'est aussi un jour d'être de l'autre côté, dans la navette?
Sait-on jamais.
Heute ist das Space Shuttle problemlos ins All gestartet.
Die Astronauten scheinen nicht abergläubisch zu sein. Immerhin ist es die 13. Mission der Atlantis. Den Franzosen und die 5 Amerikaner sowie die 10 Ratten an Bord stört es nicht. Mit nur 4-minütiger Verspätung heben sie von der Startrampe in Cape Canaveral ab. Der Flug dient zur Erforschung einer der größten Zukunftsgefahren, dem riesigen Ozonloch über der Antarktis. Unterwegs wird dann auch noch ein deutscher Forschungssatellit im Weltraum ausgesetzt.
Die letzte Sonnenfinsternis dieses Jahrtausends hat sich heute über Südamerika vollzogen. Vor allem in der Gegend von Putre in Chile wurden enorme Vorbereitungen getroffen, denn hier war das Sonnen-Mond-Spektakel besonders gut zu sehen.
Örtliche Indianerstämme feierten auf ihre eigene, rituelle Art den Verlauf der Sonnenfinsternis. Wissenschaftler, Sternengucker aus aller Welt, aber auch Schulklassen hatten ihre ganz speziellen Methoden, ungehindert diese astrologische Besonderheit zu genießen. Und dann war es auch soweit. Der Mond schob sich langsam vor die Sonne. Für ganze 4 Minuten herrschte totale Finsternis. Dann zeigte sich die Sonne wieder in voller Schönheit. Für alle Zuschauer ein Grund zum Jubeln.
The last total eclipse for the southern hemisphere this century. The next one is expected in the year 2113. Today's lasted about 3 full minutes, long enough to get rousing cheers from large numbers of skywatchers.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Atlantis on a mission to study planet Earth.
A familiar refrain from the Kennedy Space Center today as the U.S. Shuttle Atlantis roared into orbit. The 6 astronauts aboard will be studying the Earth's eroding ozone layer. It is the 5th such environmental mission this year for NASA, part of a program to better understand the changes that affect the planet.
17:56 Uhr, die Raumfähre Atlantis hebt ab vom Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Mit an Bord 5 Astronauten und das Satellitenteleskop CHRISTA. 8 Jahre arbeiteten und forschten Wissenschaftler und Studenten der Uni Wuppertal an CHRISTA. Morgen soll der Satellit von den Astronauten ausgesetzt werden und 10 Tage lang die Erde umkreisen. Dabei misst er Spurengase wie Ozon und Fluorkohlenwasserstoffe in der oberen Atmosphäre. Zusammen mit dem Space Shuttle Atlantis soll CHRISTA dann wieder zur Erde zurückkehren.
The first day was very busy with activation of all the payloads, including the CHRISTA-SPAS. And you see Kurt and Joe in the forward flight deck controlling the digital autopilot and also keeping the big picture of on all the systems. While on the aft flight deck, Ellen is flying the robot arm to grapple the CHRISTA-SPAS with a special electrical connector to activate the batteries. You see the arm closing to the payload. You can see the target, which is a very important visual cue for the arm operator to center the end effector and the snares around the grapple fixture. Then comes time for the deploy, and starting with the unberth of the payload very smoothly to prevent any saturation of the gyros on board the CHRISTA-SPAS, and then a maneuver from the low hover to the release attitude. You can see the mass antenna moving, scanning the atmosphere. This is quite a long maneuver from the low hover to release attitude. CHRISTA-SPAS is a composition of the platform SPA and the instrument CHRISTA and MARCI. CHRISTA stands for Cryogenic Infrared Spectrometers and Telescope for the Atmosphere. And with the 3 telescopes on board and very high-speed sensors, it collects a very high space resolution data of the middle atmosphere. And when we get ready on the opposite side as well as on CHRISTA for release, I check the trigger to open the snares in order to start the release. And you can see now the end effector backing away from the payload. Very nice view of the Earth in the background. And when the arm stops at a few feet from the payload, down from the aft flight deck will fire the first separation maneuver. And once the deploy is complete, the ground team and the crew on board is very happy with the successful deploy.
Einen deutschen Forschungssatelliten haben Astronauten der US-Raumfähre Atlantis ausgesetzt. 8 Tage lang soll er Infrarotmessdaten über die Erdatmosphäre sammeln. Die Wissenschaftler erhoffen sich davon Erkenntnisse über mögliche Klimaveränderungen, wie etwa das Ozonloch über der Nordhalbkugel. Nach erfolgreichem Einsatz soll die Besatzung der Atlantis den Satelliten wieder einfangen und zur Erde zurückbringen.
US Shuttle Atlantis has successfully completed another stage of its mission. It has launched a telescope-laden German satellite that is designed to study the middle atmosphere. The $35 million CHRISTA satellite will float freely till next week, when the Atlantis is scheduled to retrieve it. The astronauts also switched on secondary experiments which will help scientists better understand the nature of the hole in the ozone layer. Now stay with us because we'll be back in a moment with the latest sports news.
Die amerikanische Raumfähre Atlantis hat den ersten wiederverwendbaren deutschen Satelliten CHRISTA-SPAS erfolgreich ausgesetzt. 8 Tage lang soll er in einem Sicherheitsabstand von 40 bis 70 Kilometern hinter der Raumfähre herfliegen. Mit einem speziellen heliumgekühlten Infrarotteleskop können 14 verschiedene Spuren Gase in der Erdatmosphäre gemessen werden, um Veränderungen der Ozonschicht zu erforschen. Der Satellit soll nach 8 Tagen wieder an Bord zurückgeholt werden.
Seems like a galaxy of 100 billion stars would be hard to miss, but it was only recently that scientists spotted one they'd never seen before. This week, an international team of astronomers announced the discovery of Dwingelo 1, a hidden galaxy located about 10 million light years away. In astronomical terms, that's right next door. Dwingelo 1 was blocked from view by the disk of our own Milky Way galaxy, which covers a fifth of the sky visible from Earth, hiding anything that's behind it. Scientists say the newly discovered neighbor is probably just one of many galaxies lurking just out of sight beyond our own. Closer to home, relatively speaking, the planet Jupiter remains the focus of intense and sometimes heated scientific debate. 3 months after the shattered comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 plowed into the huge planet, some fundamental questions remain unanswered. Among them, how big were the fragments? How deep did they plunge? And was it really a comet after all? It's enough to turn a scientific conference into a sparring match. 3 months after a week-long battering by a shattered comet, the solar system's heavyweight planet is still bruised. Now scientists are slugging it out over the post-impact analysis.
Right now, we had just known things happened. Now we're trying to figure out what exactly did happen.
No one predicted the stunning outcome when the 21-piece comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 plowed into Jupiter in July. Now researchers are divided on what the world witnessed. Some say the larger fragments were nearly 2 miles across, and they augured deep into the soupy planet.
What we had predicted was that if the fragments of the comet were big enough, that the fireballs would be big enough to be seen from Earth. And indeed, they were, which means the fragments were very large.
But others believe the fragments were relatively small, about a quarter mile wide, and they only dented the outer surface of Jupiter's atmosphere.
A bigger impactor would have gone deeper into the water layer and brought up lots of water. Very little water was observed.
That fact has led to another debate. Since comets are at least 1/3 water, many are wondering if Shoemaker-Levy 9 was actually a pulverized asteroid. Asteroids are bone dry. But don't try to convince comet co-discoverer Carolyn Shoemaker.
Oh, yes, I think it's a comet. By definition, the fact that a comet has a coma and a tail, and this had coma and tail. Asteroids do not. Simple as that.
It's unlikely many of those heated debates will be settled anytime soon. Astronomers at observatories all over the world staged an unprecedented full-court press to record the demise of Shoemaker-Levy 9. It's left them with a rich bounty of scientific data. It could take them years to sift through it all. Comet or asteroid, big pieces or small, the dark clouds caused by some Shoemaker-Levy 9 fragments were as big as the Earth. Most scientists agree on this point. If our planet was in the crosshairs of this celestial machine gun,
it would have been dinosaur time all over again 65 million years ago.
65 million years ago, an asteroid or comet 6 miles in diameter plowed into what is now Mexico. Scientists believe it led to the extinction of almost all life on the planet, including the dinosaurs. It could be millions of years before something like that happens again.
There'll be smaller impacts, and exactly what the response of the Earth's atmosphere to these impactors, we're hopefully going to learn something about that by studying this event on Jupiter.
Shoemaker-Levy 9 may have changed the way people think about the risks to our planet.
That it removed the giggle factor about this subject. People suddenly realized, yes, Virginia, comets really do hit planets. And we ought to think about that a little bit.
Comet co-discoverer Gene Shoemaker is spearheading a renewed effort to create a network of telescopes to scan the skies to see if any large objects might be hurtling our way. The idea isn't entirely new, but the level of interest in it seems to be. Interest is always high when the moon eclipses the sun. No exception to that rule this week in South America. It was a total eclipse where the moon completely obscures the sun. The best viewing spots were in the mountains of Bolivia, Chile, and Peru. Birds and animals fell silent during the unusual phenomenon, but crowds celebrated the occasion. The next total solar eclipse will be over southern Asia and the South Pacific in October of 1995.
Shuttle Atlantis with a 5-man, 1-woman crew is well into its current mission high above the planet Earth. But since its launch Thursday, the mission has hit some snags. Joining us now to talk about those snags and the mission as a whole is CNN's John Hallman, watching the shuttle as always. What can you tell us, John?
John, it's not been a bad mission overall. As you say, a couple of problems, little problems. About 30 minutes ago, one of the onboard computers stopped working. It was a ground computer that talks to a computer on the shuttle. They took about 8 minutes, fixed it, it was okay. One of the 7 major science instruments, though, worked for 6 hours and then stopped. And they've been working for 4 or 5 days to try to fix it. Still not fixed. They've decided to give up on it and go on to other things. But the astronauts are working harder on this entire mission to make it relate more to people here on Earth. One of the things they decided to do this week is monitor the weather down here. Commander Don McMonigal managed to aim several cameras down into the Atlantic Ocean between Africa and North and South America. There's a hurricane down there called Florence. He told an interviewer from the Weather Channel about the storm and about a broken instrument on board as well.
As we approach the hurricane from the southwest, you can see we're flying with the shuttle's tail forward and we're upside down. The hurricane in this picture is in the lower left corner, and we are approaching the hurricane from a range of about 1,000 miles. We can pick it up. In the next scene I'm going to show you here, we are looking at the hurricane from our elbow camera. And you can see that the hurricane's form is very well defined. On the south edge of the hurricane, we can see the striated bands of the thunderstorms that were developed there. And as we approach the hurricane, we are probably about 200 miles to the east of it. And we can zoom in and see the eye wall of the hurricane as well. The eye of the hurricane right there in that image is just above the arm, but the eye is not a completely hollow wall as we see in some hurricanes, but the eye is well enough defined so we can see the cumuliform clouds that are forming in the center of the hurricane's eye.
Don, that's a fantastic picture, especially the close-up view of the eye wall there, very well defined, as you mentioned. Don, I was wondering if you could give us a little more information. We understand that we had a report that there may have been some trouble with one of the ozone monitoring devices, and I was wondering if that problem has been corrected.
Well, we have a problem with some of the data transfer from one of our ozone monitoring devices, and unfortunately we may not be able to collect that data, but we have a whole variety of 6 instruments on the ATLAS palette, as well as 2 instruments on the CHRISTA-SPAS that are collecting information about the middle layer of our atmosphere, and many of those instruments, several of the instruments, will be looking for ozone as well.
There are 7 ozone monitoring machines on board, and with one broken, the other 6 are working to tell scientists what's in the atmosphere, causing this protective ozone layer to deteriorate during the fall of every year. Now, John, we can't see it right now, but about 56 miles behind the shuttle, there's a free-flying satellite that was launched from Atlantis last Friday. The German-built satellite is called CHRISTA, and it carries infrared telescopes which look for gases in the atmosphere which could play a role in ozone depletion. This is a $35 million satellite, and it's already recorded 3 million images of these various gases. Scientists say before the satellite is picked up for the trip home, they want to make 10 million similar images like this. It's just, there's a lot of exotic equipment on board.
Exotic equipment and pregnant rats. We have to do the pregnant rat update. Tell us how things are going with them.
Nobody has had an early delivery. All the mother rats continue to be pregnant. The purpose of this experiment, John, as we told our viewers several days back, is to find out whether mammals can maintain a pregnancy and weightlessness, because the ultimate goal is to have pregnant human beings on board spaceships. You know, one of these science fiction things that some people at NASA and the European Space Agency are thinking about now is long missions not only to other planets but to other galaxies, missions that would take 50, 60, 70 years to complete. And if you had a mission that took 70 years and you had some 40-year-old astronauts on it, they wouldn't make it to the other end. Their children or grandchildren would have to be the human beings to land at the other end and then get back. So this is people make fun of pregnant rats on the space shuttle, but it's in fact a very important experiment.
Let me ask you another question about future astronauts, and we ought to tell people that John Holman just got his first opportunity to fly solo in an airplane. He's a very proud father of a picture that's sitting here on the desk showing everyone. Is that the plan now? You're going to try and head into space?
Absolutely. I've been talking to NASA administrators, John, for years about the Journalist in Space program. After the Challenger blew up, the program was canceled. No more civilians on the shuttle. But I was told by a senior NASA official recently that Bill Clinton, the current president in the United States, is at least thinking about the possibility of reviving the civilian in space program. And if that happens, you and I and our viewers on CNN International will perhaps get to hear live from inside a space shuttle the launch and a mission told by somebody whose face looks very familiar to this one.
We'll get our cards and letters going to NASA right away. John Holman, thanks very much.
Okay, John.
Weekend, an American World War II bomber has been recovered from a remote swamp in Papua New Guinea. Members of the Royal Australian Air Force raised the well-preserved Boston bomber from its murky grave where it had lain for more than 50 years now. The swamp protected the plane from damaging sunlight, weather conditions, and perhaps most dangerous of all, souvenir hunters. Despite the breakdown of some monitoring equipment, the U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis is pushing ahead on its mission to study the Earth's environment. The 5-man, 1-woman crew of the Atlantis is having to do without one of the several atmospheric and solar energy detectors in the shuttle's cargo bay. The instrument apparently suffered a computer breakdown. The chief mission of the shuttle this trip is the study of the Earth's atmosphere, especially the effects of sunlight and pollution on the ozone layer.
Ihnen mal einen Hurrikan wieder zeigen, zum Glück weit entfernt von bewohntem Gebiet, mittendrin im Atlantik. Das ist, der Name Florence zeigt es, der 6. in diesem Jahr, also keine sehr intensive Hurrikansaison. Und wenn Sie hier mal genau hinschauen, in der Mitte sehen Sie auch so einen kleinen dunklen Fleck, das ist das sogenannte Auge des Hurrikans. Das kommt dadurch zustande, dass die Wolken auf einer spiralförmigen Bahn in die Höhe getrieben werden, wie durch eine Turbine, und dabei sinkt dann in der Mitte in diesem Loch die Luft zu Boden und dabei lösen sich die Wolken auf. Übrigens, in einem solchen Hurrikan werden innerhalb eines Tages so viel Energie umgesetzt, die ausreichen würde, ganz Deutschland, Schweiz und Österreich ein Jahr lang mit elektrischer Energie zu versorgen. Ihnen noch einen angenehmen Abend. Tschüss.
Hello and welcome. I'm Miles O'Brien. This week in Cairo, a United Nations conference came up with a 20-year plan to ease the problems of overpopulation and its potentially devastating consequences here on Earth. The plan calls for some down-to-earth solutions, like economic growth, family planning, and giving women more control over their lives. But there are some researchers who are looking for solutions to the problem of overpopulation in space.
The Earth from here is a grand oasis of the big vastness of space.
Spaceship Earth, a tiny blue marble in the void, overbooked with passengers, overburdened supporting them. There are some who believe down-to-earth solutions may not be enough.
In the long term, the only viable solutions to the Earth's growing problems are going to be found in space. We have to break the bonds of the zero-sum game, get off of the planet, access the incredible, enormous resources that are available in the solar system.
It's the stuff of science fiction. The routine flights, space station, and lunar base in 2001, A Space Odyssey. The human settlements in a galaxy far, far away of Star Wars fame.
Come, let me get you something.
Distant dreams for some, dangerous delusions for others.
The idea that a shiny silver rocket is going to take us to Mars just when Earth gets trashed, it just isn't going to happen. We need to face our problems here on Earth.
But many space advocates say facing problems on Earth is precisely what they're trying to do.
Well, after we've dammed all the rivers and
done everything that we can or are willing to do with nuclear power, then we're going to need some alternatives.
Electrical engineering professor Dee Patton is a proponent of solar power from space. The idea? Energy from the sun would be captured by solar collectors in Earth orbit, where there's never a cloudy day, then converted into microwaves, which could be beamed back to Earth.
Beam power is not Buck Rogers stuff. It's not, okay? I would say the technology is very largely in hand. It's a matter of economics.
This spinning propeller is running on power converted into microwaves, then beamed across a lab at Texas A&M University. Engineers are convinced this process can work over much longer distances. They believe microwaves could effectively beam power down from space at energy levels low enough to avoid vaporizing passing birds or airplanes.
The problem with all of these ideas of doing it purely in free space is you've got to take the materials up from Earth, and that's very expensive.
Engineering professor David Criswell believes he has a cheaper alternative. He wants to build a solar power station on the moon using metal, glass, and silicon mined from the lunar soil, reducing the amount of equipment which must be launched into space.
Instead of taking up pieces, you can take up small machines that make the pieces that make the power, and so you get leverage.
Criswell says microwaves could be beamed from the moon to Earth-orbiting reflectors to ensure an uninterrupted flow of power. He says his elaborate plan could produce 100 times more electricity than the Earth uses right now. As long as we're on the moon, what else is up there? Geologists who have studied the painstakingly preserved moon rocks and soil from the Apollo missions say there is oxygen, silicon, iron, calcium, aluminum, and magnesium, elements which might be useful for sustaining a lunar base, but definitely not worth carting back to Earth.
Right now, if the moon were paved with gold, it would cost more to bring it back than the gold is worth.
But scientists say there is something in the lunar soil which might be worth bringing back one day. It's a kind of helium called helium-3. Only trace amounts of it exist here on Earth. The experts say helium-3 could fuel a nuclear fusion reaction, which is highly efficient and generates virtually no radioactivity. Proponents of this idea say they can capture helium-3 by strip mining the moon. A mobile machine could inhale the lunar topsoil, heat it to separate and collect the gases, then dump the soil in place. Back on Earth, helium-3 could theoretically be used in specially designed nuclear reactors.
It'd be the first time in human history that we could think of producing long-term energy with essentially no radioactive waste from a nuclear process.
But commercially viable fusion of any kind is still many decades from reality. In fact, most experts say power from space schemes are all pie-in-the-sky ideas.
People are going to be more inclined to invest in something where they know what the costs are going to be, rather than betting tens of billions of dollars on something very uncertain like power from space.
That is not deterring Harrison Schmidt, a helium-3 proponent who knows a lot about the lunar landscape.
I was strolling on the moon one day.
He walked on the moon during the last Apollo mission. He says the profit potential of helium-3 may lead us back to the moon, financed by entrepreneurs.
It's not only just an economic opportunity, a potential economic opportunity, it's one which really can offer a bridge for the human species to move into the solar system.
But first we need to learn how to live off the land. Alien land, that is. More on that when we come back. Could colonizing space actually help ease the population crunch here on Earth? And what would it take to sustain human life for an extended period of time on the moon or Mars? Experiments are underway to find all that out, and they don't require space travel.
The weather is partly cloudy, slight chance of afternoon showers.
It's a typical morning at Biosphere 2. Engineers and scientists on the outside are looking in.
It can have a huge impact on the CO2 concentrations.
They are combing through the latest graphs, charts, and readings.
There were some questions in here about the oxygen reading.
To make sure they remain balanced on the ecological tightrope which allows life to flourish in a bottle.
I was actually personally quite surprised how much effort it takes to maintain a closed system.
Bernd Zabel is one of 7 men and women currently living on the inside looking out of Biosphere 2, a $150 million terrarium brimming with an ark-like selection of plants, crops, and animals in various environments. The privately financed Biosphere 2 was initially conceived as a prototype for a human colony on Mars.
I mean, you're always on guard, you're always aware, you're always ready to do something because something might go wrong.
And in its 3-year history, a lot has gone wrong under the sealed glass, where everything is recycled. Oxygen levels plummeted dangerously low. Carbon dioxide content rose unacceptably high. Problems which were solved with help from the outside world.
If you were stranded on Mars, that's a problem that could kill you before you solved it.
NASA is taking a less ambitious approach to closed systems. Scientists are working on ways to grow plants hydroponically in space. First in the proposed Earth-orbiting space station, but with an eye toward lunar or Martian colonies. Besides, no one suggests space-based biospheres will be as elaborate and complex as this. These days, the stated goals of Biosphere 2 are literally more down to Earth. The closed system under glass is viewed as a miniature model of the vastly larger and yet finite world beyond. Right now, scientists here hope the lessons they learned from Biosphere 2 can be applied to our own planet. It's a lesson in the complexity and unpredictability of our planet. Scientists here now say that's a more important challenge than any escapade in space.
I don't think it's by any means impossible, but I think one has to be very careful to simply say, yeah, we can do it here, so we can do it there. I don't know. I think we have a lot to discover and to learn.
But NASA scientist David McKay says a concerted effort to build a colony on the moon would be the best way to learn about conserving resources here on Earth.
And that requires a kind of technology that will have, I think, major benefits on the Earth in terms of recycling, in terms of reusing materials, not wasting materials, not dumping gases out into the atmosphere. You can't afford to do that on the moon or Mars.
Like a space alchemist, McKay has devised ways to turn lunar soil into water, oxygen, and sturdy bricks. He's made silicon and glass out of rocks found on the moon. Essential transformations for a moon colony to thrive. And according to McKay, potentially distant solutions to resource depletion on Earth. Too distant for some to take seriously.
I'm sure that someday in the future, people will live in colonies in space. I am also sure that that day is so far in the future that we have to face our problems here on Earth, overpopulation, overconsumption, pollution, in the next 50 to 100 years.
But some space boosters say it may be too late if we wait 50 or 100 years to tap into the resources of space.
The 10 billion or so people back on Earth in 50 or 100 years are going to be so impoverished, so overwhelmed with problems here, that the solutions are completely out of reach.
In his newly published book, The Millennial Project, author Marshall Savage lays out a 1,000-year plan to colonize the moon, Mars, assorted asteroids, and eventually other solar systems.
It's absolutely essential that people begin to make this leap of imagination that's required to see that the answer to our current problems is off of the Earth.
Is it vision, escapism, or lunacy? Can we really help save the Earth by leaving? It's a question which wasn't on the agenda in Cairo, but it is sparking serious thought and lively debate elsewhere on the planet.
15 billion years old. But now, new information from the Hubble Space Telescope has put the universal birth date in a different range.
These results imply an age for the universe of between 8 and 12 billion years, depending on the amount of matter in the universe.
The repaired telescope zeroed in on a galaxy 56 million light years away. There are blinking stars in this galaxy which can be used to measure distance and the speed with which the galaxy is moving away from the Earth.
A galaxy at the distance of M100 in the Virgo cluster is moving away from us at a speed of 3 million miles per hour. A traveler at this speed could cross the continental U.S. in 3 seconds.
In case you're wondering why this is important, you're not alone.
And that there's an incredible amount of curiosity there about questions which will not necessarily lead to a better toaster tomorrow. but which satisfy their curiosity, their yearning to learn about the universe.
While this evidence lends credibility to the Big Bang theory about the beginning of the universe, astronomers don't yet know whether the universe will expand forever or could someday begin to contract. But the telescope could help find that out. The astronomers say they'll have a much closer answer to the age of the universe question in about 3 years when their project is completed. John Holloman, CNN, at the Goddard Space Flight Center, Greenbelt, Maryland.
Not look like much now, but in a few years' time, this rocky mountaintop in northern Chile will be home to one of the world's largest land-based telescopes. The $176 million Gemini project aims to put up 2 8-meter telescopes here and in Hawaii to give astronomers a better fix on the skies.
The 2 telescopes thus will be able to see both the northern sky from Hawaii and the southern sky from here in Chile. We need to be able to do this because the Earth is round and we can't see over the hump, as it were.
The Gemini project is a joint effort by the United States, England, Canada, Chile, Brazil, and Argentina. Work on the telescopes has already begun. Construction of the observatory, just across the mountain from the U.S. Observatory at Cerro Tololo, is now officially underway. The Gemini telescopes will be twice the size of the 4-meter telescope housed here, now the biggest optical telescope in the southern hemisphere. Chile is home to 3 of the world's most important observatories. The clear, dry air of Chile's desert makes it ideal for looking at southern hemisphere skies.
What we know is that this site here on Sierra Pachon is one of the very best sites in the world in terms of the quality of the images that we get and in terms of the stability of the atmosphere.
Astronomers say that these ground-based telescopes are necessary despite the successes of the Hubble Space Telescope.
Hubble telescope is only a 2-meter diameter telescope, and so it can collect, even though it makes very, very precise images, it can collect only the light that falls within a 2-meter area, whereas this telescope, 4 times as big, 16 times the area, it can collect a lot more light. It can see much fainter things than the space telescope can see.
The Gemini telescope will not be the only one of its kind in Chile. The European Southern Observatory, a consortium of European nations, will put up another telescope of similar size on another mountaintop in Chile. The astronomical race here has begun. Ronnie Lovler, CNN, Cerro Tololo, Chile.
And after 8 days of free flight, it was time to join back up with SPAS to bring it home. It is a beautiful sight here against the deep black of space. Kurt monitored the rendezvous and performed the final burns from the left seat, while I managed the various sensors used to display our approach on a portable computer. Don flew the final stages from the aft station, taking inputs from us and the computer program, but ultimately using the best sensors we had on board, his very own eyes. We worked our way in until we could see every detail of the surface of the CHRISTA-SPAS. Finally, for the grapple, Jean-Francois operated the handheld laser and gave Don and Kurt very accurate range and range rate measurements that allowed us to make our rendezvous time almost down to the second.
Here's a little closer view of CHRISTA-SPAS as Don is flying the final part of the approach, and I'm getting ready to use the robotic arm to do the capture. And this is a view of the arm as it's coming in over the grapple pin. And then I initiate the capture sequence, which pulls the payload onto the arm and rigidizes it. Here's a view after we've captured it and before we've berthed it in the payload bay, looking out the overhead window.
A complete report coming up when World News continues. It was not the standard rendezvous technique, but shuttle scientists smoothly snatched a satellite from space Saturday. Joining me now to tell us about it is CNN's John Holloman. John?
Actually, this was a very interesting thing. The astronauts had to do 4 things right to make this mission a success. They had to get off the ground, which they did about 8-9 days ago. They had to get this satellite launched out of the shuttle's payload bay so that it could do some work about 50 miles behind the space shuttle. And the third thing they had to do was be able to capture it successfully, put it back in the payload bay. And the fourth thing they had to do successfully is land without having a wreck. So they've done 3 out of the 4 things. Here are the first pictures of the shuttle's docking with this German CHRISTA-SPAS satellite. The shuttle is on the left of your screen. That's the nose visible down there in the lower left-hand corner. The robot arm is extending upward to the $35 million German-built CHRISTA-SPAS satellite. And in the upper right corner of your screen, the Earth is visible as Atlantis is passing up the east coast of the United States. Here's what it sounded like when Commander Don McMonigal announced that robot arm operator Ellen Ochoa had grabbed the satellite.
Houston, Atlantis, we have CHRISTA-SPAS.
And Atlantis, Houston, we copy and we concur. That was a superb rendezvous and a great SPAS grapple. You've broken new ground with the R-bar approach, and your timing was perfect. You've given us some important data and a lot of confidence, and well done.
From space that we've seen in the past few minutes show the shuttle with its precious cargo moving over the North Atlantic and over Great Britain and Northern Europe and Asia, moving slightly in preparation for bringing CHRISTA-SPAS into the cargo bay. Now, this satellite is chock full of computer tape recorders with information on chemicals in the Earth's upper atmosphere and the ozone layer. The German scientists who built this satellite have been able to get about 1% of its data on the upper atmosphere and gases in that atmosphere already, but the lion's share of that information is stored on these tape recorders. The process of lowering the CHRISTA-SPAS into the cargo bay will take about an hour. Moments ago, robot arm operator Ellen Ochoa told an interviewer about the satellite capture.
And it was very exciting, especially the view of the satellite as you come in towards it. And let me just show you a little model here to give you an idea of what the satellite looks like. This is the CHRISTA-SPAS satellite that we were rendezvousing with today, although in reality it's all covered with white blankets, so we don't see all these different colors. The shuttle came to it from an attitude coming up from below. So the shuttle was between the Earth and the satellite, facing towards the satellite, moving in towards. And the rendezvous went very well, and it was so well positioned that it really wasn't a very hard job to go and take the robotic arm and capture it at the end.
I have a 16-month-old boy, so wouldn't he have loved to play with those toys in weightlessness? The next big event for the Atlantis crew is packing the shuttle for the trip home. Landing is scheduled for 12:46 GMT on Monday, and CNN International, of course, will have live coverage of the landing, just as we always do. But the big news from this day today is that they were able to successfully capture this satellite. It was using a technique that they'd never used before, and it's a very important technique for something coming up next year, which is the docking of the space shuttle with the Russian Mir space station. What normally happens when the shuttle goes to capture a satellite is that the satellite is floating here, the shuttle is up here, and what they do is they just slow the shuttle down so that it will just sort of back into the satellite, then they grab it. What they did this time was that they had the satellite like this, the shuttle then came up from underneath the satellite, and the reason they did that technique was because they didn't want the rocket fumes, the rocket jets from the shuttle's exhaust as they maneuver it to impact on the satellite. The Mir space station, this Russian-built space station, is the workhorse of long-duration spaceflight, and it has solar panels on the outside that are very fragile. And people in Russia were concerned that if the shuttle did what it normally does and fired its rockets against those panels, that they might be damaged, and then you'd have astronauts and cosmonauts on the space station with no way to turn on the lights. So they decided to try this new technique today. The ground-based managers have told me this morning they're so excited that it worked, because that's one more step on the way to connecting the shuttle with the Russian ship.
John, what else is on tap for today?
Well, what they have to do next is get this satellite that's still out there on the arm and bring it down into the cargo bay. And then they'll start making preparations to come home. They've been up for 10 days now. They'll be coming home, as I said, at 12:46 GMT on Monday. And the astronauts always tell you about this time in a space flight, they'd really like a shower. They have not gotten to wash. They've been eating this processed food in little bags, and you inject hot water into it, and you get, I mean, they'd probably like a little steak and potatoes, and they'd certainly, I guarantee you, would like a good hot shower now. So those are the things that they're preparing for and getting ready to do next.
How do you think they'll be graded on this one?
Well, almost everything they did was right. There are a bunch of machines in the cargo bay and out on this CHRISTA-SPAS satellite. All of them worked but one. It's probably an A- because one of the 7 main science instruments worked for about 10 hours and then shut down. They think power surge knocked out its computer. But the scientists on the ground say all the information they're getting so far is really good, and when the tapes are replayed from the satellite they just brought on board, they're going to have a great deal of new information about our ozone layer.
Thank you, John. John Holloman. That's World News for now. Global View is coming up with a focus on the U.S. elections after a check of World News headlines. Please stay with us. This crew is packing away a German science satellite captured a few hours ago. Earlier, I asked CNN's John Holloman about the operation.
The big news from this day today is that they were able to successfully capture this satellite. It was using a technique that they'd never used before, and it's a very important technique for something coming up next year, which is the docking of the space shuttle with the Russian Mir space station. What they did this time was that they had the satellite like this. The shuttle then came up from underneath the satellite, and the reason they did that technique was because they didn't want the rocket fumes, the rocket jets from the shuttle's exhaust as they maneuver it, to impact on the satellite.
Atlantis is scheduled to land Monday. Those are the world news headlines for now. I'm Sachi Koto. We'll be back with more world news in 30 minutes. Stay tuned now for Your Money.
Major snows anywhere from 1 to 2 feet in parts of southwestern Colorado. And as we go underneath the clouds, take a look. They've got winter storm warnings in the upper elevations on the big island of Hawaii. Lots of snow out west.
Low pressure will be moving through the northern U.S. A lot of rain associated with this system, and the tropical storm farther to the south.
Made in Germany macht's möglich. Himmelseinblicke der ultimativen Art. Der erste Spiegel für die Großanlage ging heute von Mainz aus auf die Reise. Die Riesenlinse wird jetzt per Schiff nach Frankreich transportiert. Dort bekommt sie den letzten optischen Schliff. 2 weitere Spiegel für den Teleskopgiganten sind bei Schott in Mainz noch in Arbeit. Jeder einzelne wiegt 25 Tonnen und hat einen Durchmesser von mehr als 8 Metern.
Shuttle Atlantis is scheduled to return to Earth Monday at the end of its 11-day mission. The crew is wrapping up 11 days of experiments focusing on the Earth's atmosphere, the ozone layer, and the sun. One highlight of the mission was the retrieval of a German-made satellite Saturday. We get more from CNN's John Holloman.
The most difficult job on the astronauts' orbital agenda has now been completed. Shuttle Commander Don McMonagle maneuvered Atlantis beneath the German-built CHRISTA-SPAS satellite, and robot arm operator Ellen Ochoa grabbed it.
Houston, Atlantis, we have CHRISTA-SPAS.
And Atlantis, Houston, we copy and we concur. That was a superb rendezvous and a great SPAS grapple. You've broken new ground with the R-bar approach, and your timing was perfect. You've given us some important data and a lot of confidence, and well done.
Astronaut Ochoa showed how she captured the satellite, which has been studying the Earth's environment.
The rendezvous went very well, and it was so well positioned that it really wasn't a very hard job to go and take the robotic arm and capture it at the end.
The satellite has spent more than a week flying behind the shuttle, making digital images of the Earth's upper atmosphere. All the information is stored on digital tape inside the satellite. It will be played back by ground-based scientists after Atlantis lands. The landing is scheduled for Monday morning at the Kennedy Space Center.
We had a peculiar phenomena occur during one of our supply water dumps. We dump water overboard that's either not needed for cooling or consumption by the crew. You can see in the upper left corner here is the supply water dump nozzle with a stream of water coming out. What's building here is an icicle that formed on the outside of the cargo bay door, which is off the picture to the right. And the icicle formed and would have continued formation probably right up to the dump nozzle had we not stopped the dump at about this time. Now watch the plug here. This is a look at the entire icicle after it had formed about 6 feet long off the payload bay door, and that part of that ice remained all the way through the entry until post-landing. It was still on the vehicle.
Here we have the flight deck crew, Don, myself, and Joe preparing to do a procedure called flight control checkout, where we
crank up one of the auxiliary power units for hydraulics, and we move all the flight controls and check all the implementation and displays out for our trip home, make sure Atlantis is ready to come home. Standard procedure we do every mission.
The astronauts compiled mounds of information about the Earth's atmosphere that scientists will use for comparison in the future. Atlantis is scheduled to end its mission on Monday.
Watching closely, Tropical Storm Gordon, which will be moving north of Cuba and towards the Bahamas, and eventually it looks like towards the southeastern coast of the U.S. Windy conditions, rainfall will be heavy at times across sections of South Florida, another system off the coast in the northwest. That is an updated look at your world weather forecast.
The astronauts are due to return home on early Monday, and the shuttle has spent now 11 days in space studying the shrinking ozone layer and how it is affected by the sun. While in space, the shuttle also released and retrieved a German satellite that collected information on the Earth's atmosphere.
Gordon, a tropical storm moving into the Bahamas. It looks like it's going to throw more rain back into the Gold Coast of Florida. More rain showers spread about the eastern United States, too.
Atlantis is scheduled to return to Earth about 4 hours from now. Avoiding Tropical Storm Gordon, mission managers kept the shuttle in space for an extra orbit and rerouted its landing from Cape Canaveral in Florida to an Air Force base in California. Scientists focus this mission monitoring variations in the Earth's ozone.
Well, that's it. You see it. I mean, winds are up to 45, 50 miles an hour. It's a tropical storm. The name is Gordon. It's causing some high surf and some strong gusty winds and rain down in southern Florida. It's moving west at about 10 miles an hour. No threat now. The only thing, it's so late in the season, we don't think so. And it's going to go back over the Gulf of Mexico. We'll just keep a weather eye. Also, a line of showers from Texas up through the Mississippi Valley and some rain in the northwest and snow in the Cascades. Here's what's happening in your world even as we speak.
Early today, flight controllers bypassed their first chance to bring Atlantis home to Florida's Kennedy Space Center. Mission Control told the 6 astronauts to aim instead for a landing this morning at Edwards Air Force Base in California. The landing is now set for 10:34 Eastern. CNN plans live coverage.
Winds have been increasing across this area up to tropical storm strength, and winds will continue to be a problem, along with very heavy rainfall from Florida and into the Bahamas, where tropical storm warnings are also in effect. That is a quick look at your weather. We will have a complete forecast coming up within the hour.
Sent towards Edwards Air Force Base in California. The shuttle's landing is expected very shortly. We'll cover that live. The U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis, which is about to land at Edwards Air Force Base in California.
Commander Don McMonagle now flaring the orbiter out for final approach. And the landing gear is now down and locked. Main gear touchdown. Nose gear touchdown. Atlantis is rolling out on runway 22 at Edwards Air Force Base in California on the 175th orbit of the mission, completing 4,555,000 miles. This is the 43rd landing of a space shuttle at the Edwards facility.
Well, Atlantis was diverted to Edwards Air Force Base in California because of bad weather conditions in Florida, where a tropical storm was hitting it with driving rain and winds. The touch-time time was rescheduled. The families of the astronauts have been flown in advance to California to greet the 6 people on board the shuttle. It was an 11-day mission, successful landing there.
live coverage of US Space Shuttle Atlantis landing.
Fähre Atlantis ist vor gut 2 Stunden auf dem Luftwaffenstützpunkt Edwards gelandet. Atlantis war mit 6 Astronauten an Bord 11 Tage lang im All gewesen und hatte dabei mehr als 8 Millionen Kilometer zurückgelegt. Wegen schlechten Wetters in Cape Canaveral musste sie nach Kalifornien umdirigiert werden. Der Rücktransport nach Florida kostet 1,5 Millionen Mark.
Touchdown. Nose gear touchdown. Atlantis is rolling out on runway 22 at Edwards Air Force Base in California on the 175th orbit of the mission, completing 4,555,000 miles. This is the 43rd landing of the space shuttle at the Edwards facility.
Die Raumfähre Atlantis ist am Nachmittag auf dem kalifornischen Luftwaffenstützpunkt Edwards gelandet. Die 6 Astronauten hatten während ihres 11-tägigen Fluges die Erdatmosphäre erforscht. Zu ihren letzten Arbeiten hatte es gehört, den deutschen Forschungssatelliten CHRISTA-SPAS wieder einzuholen.
Die Raumfähre mit 6 Astronauten an Bord landete sicher auf der Piste des kalifornischen Luftwaffenstützpunktes Edwards. Starke Winde hatten die US-Raumfahrtbehörde gezwungen, die eigentlich in Cape Canaveral geplante Landung abzusagen und Atlantis nach Kalifornien umzudirigieren. Experten bezeichneten die Atlantis-Forschungsmission als die bislang erfolgreichste.
Die amerikanische Raumfähre Atlantis ist auf der Edwards Air Force Base in Kalifornien gelandet. Der Wirbelsturm Gordon, der in der Karibik wütet, zwang die NASA, die in Cape Canaveral geplante Landung abzusagen und die Raumfähre nach Kalifornien umzudirigieren. Die Atlantis hat den deutschen Forschungssatelliten CHRISTA-SPAS an Bord. Mit dessen Hilfe untersuchte die 6-köpfige Besatzung vor allem die Erdatmosphäre.
Once we had the payload bay doors closed, it's time to reconfigure Atlantis for the trip home. We get back in our orange pumpkin suits and we prepare for the burn. We use our engines to slow the orbiter back down to re-enter the atmosphere. It's time to turn some of that kinetic energy we gained during launch back into heat. And Joe's pointing out the window, so Jean-Francois takes a look, and you can see the plasma behind us as we stream through the atmosphere, converting that energy back into heat. Out my right window here, you can see the glow around the orbiter also as we're penetrating the atmosphere. Don's managing the energy, make sure we have good energy state, and here's a long-range camera from Edwards picking up our yaw jet thrusters still firing to maintain attitude. This is a look out Kurt's right window there as we make about a 90-degree turn to final at Edwards. As we roll out on final, we had one final test to perform before we landed. It was a subsonic aero test to roll the vehicle left and right and to yaw the vehicle left and right to look at control power in those control surfaces to see if there's a potential for more crosswind capability in the vehicle. Once that was complete, we rolled ourselves back out on final approach. We fly the approach now at about 300 knots equivalent airspeed. At 2,000 feet or so, we begin to decrease our glide angle from 20 degrees to just over 1 degree. At 300 feet, Kurt extended the gear for us, and as we continually decelerate, we cross the threshold of the runway at about 225 knots, 17 feet in the air, and targeting a touchdown speed of 195 knots. We touched down about 3,200 feet down the runway, and immediately after touchdown, we deploy a drag chute. We had the first reusable drag chute of the space shuttle program. The drag chute helps us decelerate as well as lowers the slapdown rates on the nose gear. The deceleration we get out of the drag chute reduces the amount of runway we use by about 1,500 to 2,000 feet. At about 60 knots, we release the drag chute so we don't have to contend with that hardware post-wheel stop. And by this time, we had flown about 175 revolutions of the Earth, and we'd been in space almost 11 days and flown 4.5 million miles.
Watch from Palm Beach south to Miami, valid till 11 o'clock Eastern time today. This is Gordon. We'd said yesterday that we didn't think it was going to do much, and so far so good, knock on wood. But nonetheless, we had a lot of rain, strong gusty winds. There have been some beach erosion, and obviously some problems if it's possible to produce tornadoes.
Der Wirbelsturm Gordon hat eine Spur der Verwüstung durch die Karibik gezogen. Mehr als 100 Menschen wurden getötet.
Der Wirbelsturm hat mittlerweile Florida erreicht. Mit einer Geschwindigkeit von rund 80 Stundenkilometern, begleitet von heftigen Regenfällen, zieht der Orkan über das Land. Doch das Schlimmste scheint vorbei. Nur wenige Stunden zuvor tobte der Hurrikan noch mit 235 Stundenkilometern über das offene Meer. In Florida, wie hier in Miami Beach, sind die Schäden dann noch vergleichsweise gering. Vor allem Sportboote fielen dem Sturm zum Opfer. Für viele ist es dann alles auch eher ein großer Spaß, denn eine ernsthafte Bedrohung. Zuvor war der Sturm über Kuba hinweggefegt. Zahlreiche Hotels wurden evakuiert. Im Ostteil der Insel wurden mehr als 65.000 Menschen in Sicherheit gebracht. Wassermassen überfluteten mehr als 12.000 Wohnungen. Besonders betroffen ist die Provinz Guantanamo.
Der Orkan Gordon auf Haiti. Der Sturm und Wassermassen rissen viele Häuser mit. Betroffen waren die Hauptstadt Port-au-Prince und die rund 80 Kilometer südlich gelegene Stadt Jacmel. Mit Spitzengeschwindigkeiten von etwa 100 Kilometern pro Stunde zog der Sturm weiter in Richtung Florida.
Weit über 100 Menschen sind bisher dem Tropensturm Gordon zum Opfer gefallen. Die meisten Toten gab es in Haiti bei Überschwemmungen und Erdrutschen. Verheerende Schäden richtete der Sturm auch in Jamaika und Kuba an. Gordon hat nun die Küste von Florida erreicht.
Hier sind wahrscheinlich mehr als 100 Menschen bei einem tropischen Sturm ums Leben gekommen. Besonders betroffen waren die Elendsviertel der Hauptstadt Port-au-Prince. Hier rissen Wassermassen die Häuser mit und lösten Erdrutsche aus. Tausende wurden obdachlos. Auch auf Kuba und Jamaika hat der Tropensturm Gordon schwere Schäden angerichtet. Es wurden Windgeschwindigkeiten bis zu 190 Kilometer in der Stunde gemessen. Mit etwas schwächerer Kraft zog Gordon gestern Abend über Florida hinweg und legte die Stromversorgung von etwa 200.000 Haushalten und Betrieben lahm.
There is some worry that if Gordon blows into the Gulf of Mexico, it may build up strength and strike the Florida mainland again.
Several miles south of where we are now, late last night, two men decided to go for a swim. For whatever reason, we don't know. The Coast Guard went out searching for them. They're believed lost at sea. In Fort Lauderdale, I'm Kerry Sanders. Matt?
Kerry, one quick question, then I'll let you get out of there. What is the latest forecast where you are right now?
At this point, it's sort of all over the place. One of the concerns is that this storm is going to move out over the Gulf of Mexico, then come back in and come across land. At least for the next day, this is going to be this sort of weather here.
All right, Kerry, thank you very much. Find shelter.
Besonders hart hat es die Bewohner Haitis getroffen. Fassungslos stehen diese Frauen vor den Trümmern ihrer Häuser. Der Wirbelsturm Gordon war mit über 190 Stundenkilometern über die Insel gefegt. Die Straßen der Hauptstadt Port-au-Prince versanken im Schlamm. Aus den Hütten werden immer neue Tote geborgen. Die Regierung hat den Notstand verhängt. Von Haiti aus zog Gordon dann über Kuba weiter an die amerikanische Küste. Im US-Bundesstaat Florida mussten 200.000 Haushalte zeitweise ohne Strom auskommen, weil der Sturm die Leitungen gekappt hatte. Viele Schulen blieben daraufhin geschlossen.
Continent, what is Tropical Storm Gordon will continue to be moving out into the Gulf of Mexico, producing some heavy rains over Florida, windy conditions and potential flooding through that region, while a couple of new storms in the west produce rain and snow and windy conditions, British Columbia, Alberta into California. I'm Valerie Voss.
Immer etwas, und Sie haben bestimmt von dem tropischen Wirbelsturm Gordon gehört, der sich schon seit dem Wochenende hier in der Karibik dreht. Und er ist von Haiti Richtung Nordwesten gezogen und liegt jetzt zum Teil über Florida, über der Südhälfte Floridas. Sie können hier dieses Hauptwolkenfeld sehen. Das ist ein Bild von heute Nachmittag. Da war es also in Amerika noch morgen Vormittag. Man sieht hier ganz im Westen noch das letzte Nachtdunkel. Und es bleibt jetzt abzuwarten, wo sich der Sturm hinbewegt, ob weiter in den Golf von Mexiko. Bleibt aber eher zu hoffen, dass er Richtung Atlantik zieht und dort in kälteres Wasser kommt und sich dann allmählich auflöst. Die Jahreszeit ist schon etwas ungewöhnlich, aber man kann nicht ausschließen, dass es bis Anfang Dezember noch Wirbelstürme gibt. Aber zumindest dürfte das für dieses Jahr einer der letzten sein. Das war's vom Wetter. Noch einen schönen Abend. Tschüss.
It is Tropical Storm Gordon that's been threatening the sunshine state of Florida with heavy winds, strong seas, and the potential for beach erosion. In the west, it's the next in a series of winter-like storms.
Hurricane-like destruction across South Florida. A tornado spawned by the storm ripped through a retirement community yesterday, killing one person and destroying as many as 100 mobile homes and injuring dozens. Police and rescuers went door to door in Barefoot Bay last night looking for possible victims. The tropical storm is packing 50-mile-an-hour winds and has dumped up to 9 inches of rain in some areas. Gordon is now in the Gulf of Mexico off Key West and is expected to slow down for at least a day.
Allein in Haiti starben über 400 Menschen. Mindestens 50 werden noch vermisst, vor allem in den Küstenregionen. Dort erreichte der Sturm Spitzengeschwindigkeiten bis zu 200 Stundenkilometern. Hütten und Häuser wurden weggerissen. Tausende sind obdachlos.
Küste Floridas starben 3 Menschen. Die Zahl der Todesopfer auf Haiti ist auf mehr als 400 gestiegen. Gordon zieht jetzt über weitere Küstengebiete der USA hinweg. Franziska Huwe.
Gordon wütet über Florida. Der Wirbelsturm reißt alles mit, was nicht nied- und nagelfest ist. Mindestens 30 Menschen wurden verletzt, zum Teil durch umherfliegende Äste und Trümmer. Ein 150 Meter langer Frachter lief vor Fort Lauderdale auf Grund. Ein anderes Schiff sank. Die Mannschaft wurde mit Hubschraubern gerettet. 200.000 Häuser waren in der Nacht ohne Strom. 20 Zentimeter Regen fielen binnen weniger Stunden. Auf Haiti hat die Regierung den Notstand ausgerufen. Gordon war mit 192 Stundenkilometern über die Karibikinsel hinweggefegt. Tausende sind jetzt obdachlos. Viele Menschen wurden von dem Sturm in ihren Häusern überrascht und mit den Wassermassen mitgerissen.
Tropical Storm Gordon spawned a tornado that swept through a retirement community 145 miles north of Miami. A 74-year-old man was crushed to death under the debris of one of these destroyed houses. The twister destroyed or damaged about 150 homes in its path. Storm Gordon has claimed more than 100 lives, sweeping through the Caribbean earlier this week.
The National Weather Service has lifted all storm warnings. Before moving out to sea yesterday, Gordon generated killer twisters and thunderstorms on 2 swings through Florida and earlier in the Caribbean, where scores were killed. South of Miami, rushing floodwaters washed a carload of people off a bridge into the Miami River Wednesday. 4 were rescued, 1 later died. Tuesday night, a tornado skipped through 2 mobile home retirement parks, killing 1 resident and destroying and damaging dozens of homes. Robin Kish has their story.
The 15-second tornado ripped through these manufactured homes as if they were built out of paper. Paul Souter was about to get out of his car around 7 p.m. to step indoors when the twister tore the house across the street right off of its foundation and slammed it into Souter's home.
If I'd have been a minute sooner, I'd have been in the house and not here. Not talking to you, that's for sure.
One man living in the Barefoot Bay retirement community was not so lucky. He was killed inside his home when the tornado flung his house up over his car and into the yard next door. Amidst all of the rubble, time stands still. And everywhere you look, aluminum siding hangs high in trees over power lines, like pieces of wet laundry.
All of a sudden, a blast of wind came, and boom, it took everything.
Governor Lawton Childs has declared a state of emergency in South and Central Florida.
Clark song, Thank God and Greyhound, she's gone. Well, Gordon has finally left Florida, but it is still a tropical storm with strong gusty winds all up and down the coast from the Carolinas to Virginia. We'll keep a weather eye. We never thought it was going to do the damage it did. The big story today is out west. Look at that snow, 2 to 8, 12 inches of it up in the higher elevations, and I mean blanketing the whole western part of the United States, and rain along the coast and cold temperatures to go with it. Here's what's happening in your world even as we speak.
Tropical Storm Gordon moving away from the east coast of the U.S., but still some rain showers and potential coastal flooding in that area. Big snows in stores for western parts of the U.S. and Canada. Alta, Utah has seen 80 centimeters or about 32 inches of snow so far. I'm meteorologist Valerie Voss.
Ihnen möchte ich Ihnen heute noch mal zeigen, dass zum einen der tropische Sturm Gordon, er liegt jetzt hier an der Ostküste Amerikas, ist ja von Haiti über Florida gezogen. Eine Menge Feuchtigkeit hat er Richtung Norden transportiert, deshalb dieser riesige Wolkenschirm. Windgeschwindigkeiten unter diesen Wolken etwa 100 Kilometer in der Stunde. Der zweite Hurrikan bzw. Zyklon liegt im Arabischen Meer. hier draußen vor der Küste Afrikas. Windgeschwindigkeit ebenfalls ungefähr 100 Kilometer in der Stunde. Das ist also noch kein Orkan, wie bei uns mit 120 Kilometer in der Stunde. Aber er soll sich noch ein bisschen verstärken und dann innerhalb der nächsten 3 Tage auch die Küste Somalias erreichen. Das war's vom Wetter. Einen schönen Abend noch. Tschüss.
Matt and the folks in the news did such a good job on that. We're hoping it's going to move off the Carolina coast out to sea. Nobody can believe, as cool as it is, that it hasn't been freezing. It's been unusually warm, but still, for this time of the year, it's almost unheard of, and it's been so erratic. It looks like as it leaves North Carolina, it will move to the east and miss the big cities, but I don't know. Keep your TV on and your powder dry. A little rain down in South Texas, but a big snowstorm out in the Midwest. Not the Midwest, the Rocky Mountain states. Salt Lake City's already got 7 inches of snow, 12 to 16 at the higher elevations expected. And cold, 4 below in Cutbank, Montana this morning. Here's what's happening in your world even as we speak.
The wind and waves are picking up this morning along the Virginia coast, and it's already been battering North Carolina's Outer Banks. Kenley Jones is with us again from Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. And Kenley, looking behind you, it seems the storm has already taken a toll.
That's right, Matt. About 4 houses in this section of the beach have been collapsed into the sea during the last couple of hours, helped by the pounding surf raised by Gordon and by a storm surge estimated at 6 to 8 feet. One thing about it, this storm was so unpredictable, it intensified so swiftly and moved toward the Outer Banks that no one had any warning to get down here and get their belongings out. So when these owners come down to look at what's happened here, they're not only going to not have a house, but they're not going to have what was in it either.
Kenley, the pictures we're seeing are incredible. Have people in other shore areas already been evacuated?
No, there has not been any evacuation here. People here say they are fairly used to this, believe it or not. They have what they call nor'easters here from time to time, quite frequently. And again, though, came so suddenly, there was no time for evacuation. And they believe that Gordon will strike a glancing blow instead of a direct hit. So there are no evacuations, at least not here so far.
Kenley Jones, thank you very much. We appreciate it. The Coast Guard, by the way, flew into the storm to rescue a family of 4 in the waters off North Carolina. They sent in a helicopter and managed to get the people aboard. The 4, including an infant, were stranded when their 60-foot sailboat was caught in Hurricane Gordon's high winds. The Flower 2 was heading for Bermuda when it began taking on water in 17-foot seas.
Last week, the storm's flooding rains claimed 530 lives on the island of Haiti as a tropical storm. Now, it started on Tuesday, November the 8th. Drenching Haiti, it soaked Florida with over a foot of rain. Next, it picked up enough energy from the Gulf Stream to become a hurricane with winds of 75 miles an hour. Its turn next to the northeast means a long trip over the Atlantic, probably diffusing eventually into a plain ocean storm, bringing some rain to some parts of Europe this coming week. Now,
have the STS-66 flight crew members sitting at the table, the traditional cake decorated with the crew insignia for this flight. Then we have payload commander Dr. Ellen Ochoa flying on the shuttle for the 2nd time today. Pilot Kurt Brown flying for the 2nd time today on the space shuttle. Mission commander Don McMonagle flying for commander the 1st time today, but making his 3rd trip. Joe Tanner, mission specialist, flying for the 1st time. Mission specialist Scott Perezinski, also flying for the 1st time. And European Space Agency astronaut Jean-Francois Clairvoy, making his 1st trip aboard the shuttle today. Crew is divided into the red and blue team. Some of the crew members have just been awake for just about half an hour. The others have been up since last evening. And we have the STS-66 astronauts boarding the astronaut van in KSC's industrial area, getting ready for the ride out to the launch pad. And at the 195-foot level, we've got the crew ready to get into the orbiter access, walk across the orbiter access arm to get into the crew module. This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 2 hours, 36 minutes. Commander Don McMonagle getting ready to get into the vehicle.
CDR, hope you have a good flight and enjoy that new vehicle we're giving you.
CDR, we thank you very much, and we sure we will.
T-minus 20 minutes and counting.
Atlantis, Houston, update to the KSC altimeter setting 3020.
Copy, KSC altimeter 3020.
The orbiter access arm is now being retracted away from the vehicle. It can be extended in just a few seconds if necessary. This puts the arm in the launch configuration.
And entity, the clock will hold at T-minus 5 minutes. I've got the deal. Thank you.
Final purge of the main engines is going to happen in a few seconds. Also, the engine valves are being opened to prepare for engine start. A profile test of the orbiter's aero surfaces has started. They're being moved through a pre-programmed pattern to verify they are ready for launch. The 3 main engines are being gimbaled and positioned for launch. Retraction of the gaseous oxygen vent hood is now underway. The flight crew will close and lock their visors in the next few seconds.
OTC PLT, caution warning, memory clear is complete, no unexpected messages. After that, all crew members close and lock your visors and initiate O2 flow. Good go to take Atlantis back to the skies. We'll be happy to do that. We'll see you at 11 days.
Yeah, let's go for ET LH2 pressurization.
T-minus 35 seconds.
let's go for auto sequence start.
In the next few seconds, thousands of gallons of water will be dumped on the platform to help absorb the shock of the 7 million pounds of thrust produced by the shuttle.
15.
Almost 15 seconds. 12, 11, 10, 9,
yeah, let's go.
8,
Main engine start.
7. We are go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Atlantis on a mission to study planet Earth.
Roll program, Houston.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Houston now controlling. Atlantis is underway on its 13th trip to space, rolling on course for a 57-degree inclination orbit for howling north and south inclined orbit at an altitude of 160 nautical miles. Atlantis speed is already 350 miles an hour. 3 engines on Atlantis are now throttling back to 2/3 throttle to prepare the spacecraft to pass through the area of maximum air pressure and go supersonic. About a minute and 5 seconds since launch. Atlantis speed now 1,000 miles an hour. Altitude 7 miles, 5 miles east of the Kennedy Space Center.
Go at throttle up.
Roger, go at throttle up.
Atlantis 3 main engines are now back at full throttle. All systems on the spacecraft are go. 1.5 minutes since liftoff, Atlantis has already burned more than 2.25 million pounds of propellant and weighs less than half of what it did at launch. Atlantis altitude 84,000 feet, 12 miles northeast of the Kennedy Space Center. Atlantis speed now 2,200 miles an hour. Flight controllers are standing by for burnout and separation of the twin solid rocket boosters. Booster officer confirms a good separation and jettison of the twin solid rockets. Atlantis now in its second stage. Its 3 main engines continuing to operate well at full throttle.
Atlantis performance nominal.
Copy.
That call to Atlantis indicating that its performance on the solid rockets is just as planned to this point.
Fire with the exception of weather. GC. Go. EPS. Go. Payloads. Go. Eagle. Go. Ecom. Go. Income. DC, PLT, assistant buses to fuel cell complete.
Boosters go fine.
Virgin. Go. FAO. We will delay starting your recorder.
And flight we're go. We just owe a KSC altimeter update to the crew.
Okay. Stand by. NTD flight, we got a RTLS altimeter update. Launch director flight on underground. Go ahead, Jeff. I still believe that 18 knots and a lighted Ben Guerir is an acceptable landing condition today. And I do believe that bounds the case and that we potentially could be a few knots less than that. So my recommendation of the program at this time is that these are acceptable conditions to launch.
Copy, and I did understand that the trend was downward from the previous odds. Let's go for main engine start.
Vents open.
T0 SRB ignition.
Liftoff confirmed.
Roll program, Houston.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Flight, we see the roll.
Thank you.
Flight booster.
Go ahead, booster.
3 engines look good at 104%.
Copy that.
SRB SAP.
.103 converged.
Performance nominal.
Atlantis performance nominal.
Copy.
Atlantis 2-engine Ben Guerir.
Copy. 2-engine Ben Guerir. PNC, I assume we've seen repositioning of the engines?
That's affirmative. It was nominal flight.
Okay, so you'll be go for shutdown as well on time.
Flight booster, the MPS dump's complete.
Okay, Capcom, we're go for APU shutdown for the DTO.
Atlantis Houston, Kurt, your go for the APU hydraulic shutdown per the DTO.
Okay, Chile, we copy APU hydraulic shutdown per the DTO.
Minutes to sunset. Okay, we're just inside 9 minutes. Are we complete up to the 5-minute point now?
That's right, Dave. Right now we're at a point where we've got 24 watts on this heat pipe, and the temperature between the probes is at about 6.7. We're about to dry out the heat pipe or reach the limit of its performance. Show the heat pipe. Heat pipes are effectively a pipe with a small amount of liquid, in this case freon inside, along the heat pipe temperature sensors to tell what the temperature is along the pipe. They use as an evaporation condensation mechanism to transfer heat from one end to the other. We artificially apply heat with heaters on one end. As the heat pipes evaporate and cool down at the other end, they make sure that the heat is evenly distributed along the pipe. You can only do this to a certain limit of their performance, and we're about to reach that right now.
The bay. Okay, the bay is a good. So left pod is a good exposure, I guess. We check that route. Program.
Program. Program with this. That's good. Right.
Scott, it looks like you're enjoying your first trip in space.
What gave it away?
Could be that ear-to-ear smile.
Ellen's big hair makes me smile.
I think Ellen's enjoying her second trip in space.
Yes, sir. Say hi to Gail.
Hey, Gail.
Woo!
Hey, how about this? Say hi to
Hey,
Gail.
Scott's awesome. He's done a good job.
Thanks, Kurt.
If you can just get him to stay off his head now at home.
Gail. He gets in the sleeping bag. Some people don't get in the bag.
Really?
Joe likes to be in the bag.
And I like the bag.
And he likes to close the bag. Turn the light out, Joe. Joe, open up. Knock, knock, Joe.
Say what?
Good morning.
Oh, good morning.
Open up.
You don't see it like this in the morning.
Turn the light on.
Mark, have the temperature, the latest.
Okay, open up again. I'm coming in with you.
Do what?
I'm coming in with you.
Okay.
Here it comes.
0:45. Rail number 1, 37.1. Rail 2, 37.3.
Nice and roomy. Yeah.
Rail 3,
Yeah.
37.0.
Yeah.
Rail 4, 3.
What would you equate this? Maybe the size of a coffin? Something like
Yeah,
that?
about the size of a coffin. Of course, I don't know from first-hand experience.
No. Nor do any of us.
Don't care
Nor
to.
will we for about 40 years. Some more, some less. Okay.
Look at those dust storms. Turn them up.
Where do you see the dust?
Over, kind of, yeah. This goes to the light dust. We're still at 908.
Dust blowing.
I'm glad to be up here and not down there.
Get this all cared for.
Yeah.
Well, we can see how thin our atmosphere is and how important it is to preserve and study carefully.
Absolutely, and you probably can see on some of these scenes some lightning down below the atmospheric line there, below the horizon.
Yes, sir, we can see that.
Yeah, in Houston, Atlantis, we're passing just directly overhead Galveston right now.
Yeah, we have some images of the beach out the payload bay cameras.
right? Yeah, back to center. Lot 45 for all you low mockers. Okay, 32 minutes to landing. And just past the EI down there. Not too bad. If you haven't moved your G-suit up, now's the time to do it. Throw your G's on. Okay, 75. 7,000. I got 200 looking good. Okay. 300 knots, past the 6,000. Yeah. Okay, right altimeter's in, 5,000 feet. 22 look good, they match nav, Don. 4,000 feet. 3,000 feet, speed brakes are about 40. 2,000 feet, preference next. Here is the arm. Speed brakes holding at 40. Gas in, prefer. I have a light. Around the corner at 309. 500 feet. 400 feet. Gear down. Gears on the way. I got 3 talk max. 200 feet. 150. Gears down. 100, 260. 75. 50. 40, 240, 30, 20, 15, 10, 220, 10 at 2, 15, 5 at 2, 10, 5 at 205, 200, 5, holding at 5, touchdown. Ready for drag chute, go. Drag chute's deployed. Okay, you got 3 open full brakes done. Okay. 160. Load release. Load release. Wait for drag chute, 140. Okay. Got 6,000 feet, 7,000 feet remaining. 110, 100 knots, 6,000 remaining, 90 knots, 80 knots, 70 shoots away, 50 knots, 40 knots, 30 knots, 20 knots, I think we're stopped. We'll stop, Houston. Oh, I guess and go.
Atlantis' onboard navigation system now taking data from the atmosphere as the orbiter crosses the coastline of California. The current speed is 1,800 miles per hour. Range from the landing site is 65 nautical miles. Atlantis' altitude is 84,000 feet, approaching 6 minutes from touchdown. Long-range cameras locking on to Atlantis as it approaches the Edwards facility, now just about 60 nautical miles from the landing site. The speed of the orbiter is down to 1,000 miles per hour, approaching 5 minutes from touchdown. Atlantis' current altitude is 67,000 feet. Altitude is down to 38,000 feet with a speed of 560 miles per hour.
Atlantis on energy at the 180.
Okay, 180
Atlantis' altitude is now 22,000 feet. Completing the final turn, setting up for...
Atlantis on energy at 90. Copy.
Altitude is now down to 10,500 feet, approaching 1 minute from landing. The orbiter's velocity is down to 400 miles per hour. And the landing gear is now down and locked. Main gear touchdown. Nose gear touchdown. Atlantis is rolling out on runway 22 at Edwards Air Force Base in California on the 175th orbit of the mission, completing 4,555,000 miles. This is the 43rd landing of the Space Shuttle at the Edwards facility.
Stop, Houston. Copy, wheel stop, Atlantis, and welcome home. It's a great way to end 94. Beautiful mission. I absolutely agree. We appreciate all the international support we've had on this mission to planet Earth.
Die Rakete Ariane ist abgestürzt. Zum zweiten Mal in diesem Jahr musste die Betreibergesellschaft CHRISTA-SPAS einen Rückschlag hinnehmen.
Bei dem 70. Start seit Beginn des Ariane-Programms ist dies der 7. Fehlschlag. 15 Minuten dauerte diese Mission, die von Kourou in Französisch-Guyana gestartet war. In einer Höhe von 218 Kilometern hatte die neue Version der 3. Zündstufe Probleme, die volle Kraft zu entwickeln. Die Folge: die unbemannte Rakete und der mitgeführte amerikanische Telekommunikationssatellit PanAmSat-3 im Wert von 300 Millionen Mark stürzten in den Atlantik.
15 Minuten nach dem Start stürzte eine Trägerrakete mit einem amerikanischen Fernmeldesatelliten an Bord ins Meer. Unglücksursache war vermutlich ein Triebwerksschaden in einer der Brennstufen.
It's been 1 year since a daring repair mission gave the Hubble Space Telescope corrected vision, and the big fix is still paying off. This week, scientists released Hubble snapshots of galaxies in their earliest days, about 12 billion years ago, nearly as old as the universe itself. This image shows what a spiral galaxy looks like today, but these Hubble images show spiral galaxies as they were billions of years ago. They lack the orderly pattern of more mature spirals. Also cited by Hubble, very odd-shaped galaxies like nothing ever seen before. Scientists say these images provide the clearest view yet of these old galaxies and star-like objects. Space researchers say the pictures could hold important clues to the history of the galaxies and even the eventual fate of the universe.
In this hour, we focus on a focus, lost, then found again. CNN's Miles O'Brien reveals what Hubble has enabled us to see.
You are looking at a naked quasar, the picture courtesy of the Hubble Space Telescope.
What we saw wasn't what we expected to see.
The surprise courtesy of the astronomer who found them, John Bacall.
These results are the most unexpected results to come out of Hubble.
Mysterious quasars are the most energetic objects in the universe. Bacall and others had theorized quasars were akin to black holes gobbling up nearby galaxies. But these images show quasars without any surrounding material nearby.
It was like the grin of the Cheshire Cat without the cat.
Bacall will now go back to the drawing board, his discovery the latest in a series of visually and scientifically stunning images from the orbiting observatory, whose faulty vision was corrected little more than a year ago in a series of daring spacewalks. Once a high-flying laughingstock, Hubble has quickly become a superstar.
Hubble was really defining the direction astronomy is going to be going for the next several years.
That fact was apparent at the annual meeting of the American Astronomical Society, where discussion and debate was raging over many Hubble findings.
It's just sort of bewildering, actually, to come to a meeting of this sort and to see how much is going on in this field.
The field is buzzing over what Hubble spotted in this swirling galaxy. Measurements of the brightness of some of these stars led to the startling conclusion the universe is between 8 and 12 billion years young, as much as 7 billion years younger than estimates for the oldest stars. Some are calling it a renaissance, others an age of enlightenment. Whatever the case, many astronomers here are thanking their lucky stars. They are part of what could be an unprecedented era of discovery, because Hubble will likely answer some long-standing fundamental questions and probably open up whole new lines of inquiry. Whatever happens, astronomers like John Bacall say they will always treasure this year.
If I never had another year in astronomy, then I've certainly had a wonderful astronomical career this year.
How old is the universe? How did it all begin? Age-old questions whose answers may now be well within reach. Miles O'Brien, CNN, Tucson, Arizona.
And the man who's going to help us answer those questions is Alex Filipenko. He is a professor of astronomy at the University of California at Berkeley. He is using the Hubble telescope to help him understand how some stars blow up at the end of their lives. And he joins us now from our San Francisco bureau. Professor Filipenko, thanks for joining us. The first question is, what is all this new information telling us about how the universe began?
Oh, the Hubble results are really spectacular. They are showing that the universe did indeed begin with a Big Bang, but it's been surprising that the derived age of the universe is only 8 to 12 billion years, rather than, say, 14 or 16 billion years, the ages of the oldest stars. So it suggests that although the Big Bang theory is basically correct and on solid foundation, there are certain aspects that need to be modified, and we're looking forward to working in the next few years on those modifications.
How is it possible that at the moment it looks as if the universe is actually younger than some stars in it?
Well, it's a puzzling thing, but we see that distant galaxies are all moving away from us, and the more distant galaxies are moving away more rapidly than the nearby galaxies. So if you extrapolate that expansion of the universe backwards in time, you come to a point when everything was compressed to a very small volume, in a sense a single point. And that expansion time is derived using the Hubble results to be about 8 to 12 billion years. And that's older than theories of stellar evolution suggest for the ages of the oldest stars. So we have a real dilemma on our hands.
And that's presumably one of the things that now needs to be resolved. Now, what about the evidence emerging that there genuinely are black holes? What does that tell us?
Well, the evidence is largely provided by the Hubble telescope. It shows stars in the central parts of active galaxies and quasars moving around at enormous speeds, such high speeds that there must be an object at the center of the active galaxy pulling on those stars very quickly. And that object, we calculate, must have a mass of over 1 billion times the mass of the Sun. Yet it's contained in a volume that's very small, smaller than the size of our solar system, in fact. So this shows that extremely compressed, dense objects had to have formed very early in the universe, perhaps only 1 or 2 billion years after the Big Bang itself, and that's very, very exciting.
And in terms of the kind of forces that would be necessary to make that, does that back up the theory of relativity?
Yes, it does. We know that the forces have to be very strong in order to compress matter to such a small volume. The effect of the black hole on its surroundings can then be used to test Einstein's general theory of relativity. And for example, the large amounts of light emitted from the surrounding regions of a black hole is very much what one would expect if large amounts of gas were falling into a very, very strong gravitational field.
What are the most surprising things that you feel you've learned from all this new information that's coming?
Well, I think one of the most exciting aspects of the Hubble telescope is that it can be used as a time machine to view extremely distant galaxies. Galaxies that are 5 or 10 billion light years away are being seen as they were 5 or 10 billion years ago. So in a sense, we can use the telescope as a time machine. And what astronomers have found since the telescope was repaired last December is clear evidence that galaxies evolve over time. That is, their shapes and morphologies are different long ago than they are now. And this is clear evidence that the universe is indeed evolving. Galaxies long ago did not look like galaxies look like today. And from these studies, we can hope to come to an understanding of how our own spiral Milky Way galaxy, which looks much like the one that you have on the TV right now, we can come to an understanding of how our galaxy formed and evolved over the billions of years that the universe has lived.
And do we know without any doubt that the universe is still expanding?
Yes, the universe is certainly still expanding. What we don't yet know is whether it will someday recollapse. That depends on how much matter there is in the universe. It's as though you're throwing a ball up in the air. The Earth's gravity brings it back down. But if you were to throw a ball out in deep space somewhere, it would just keep going forever at essentially a constant speed because there'd be no gravity pulling it back down towards you. The universe is very similar. There's either enough material in the universe to cause it to eventually recollapse on itself, or there isn't, in which case it will expand forever. And the quest for the answer to that question is one of the main areas of cosmology today.
And briefly, do you think that how soon we might get answers, definitive answers?
Well, I think we'll have a pretty definitive answer for the rate of expansion of the universe in perhaps 3 or 4 years. But whether the universe will expand forever and its precise age depends also on the amount of matter in the universe. And that, I think, will be a question that will take perhaps 5 or 10 years to solve.
Professor Alex Filipenko, Professor of Astronomy at the University of California in Berkeley, thanks very much for helping us understand the universe.
Thank you. My pleasure.